So, why does customer service always get worse as your business grows? Have you noticed that? Great service, great experience is critical. And so today, my goal is to show you exactly why that happens. Before we get into it, it's important to understand this that growth does not equal consistency. Okay? Growth does not equal consistency. Many business owners, operators that I see expect customer service to just improve because the business grew. And it's all because they have more. It's all because they have more. Okay? They have more people, more handoffs, more systems, right? More processes. And so they think the business should just be better as a result. But growth actually brings the opposite. Growth brings the opposite. The business grew, but the service gets harder to manage, to control, because you have different people working on the service and the experience, interacting with customers without clear identity. Without clear identity. And that's the problem. So when issues come up, as the owner, you are thinking, well, we have more. Like you are thinking, we have more. We have more people, right? You start thinking about all the reasons. We hired better people, right? We hired, right? We trained. We've done all these things that we never used to do. So why are we still inconsistent? But it's important to understand this. That growth exposes cracks. That is the missing piece. Growth exposes cracks. And here's the truth. Your business in the early stages runs on proximity. You can step in, you know the customer, you know their preferences, you know what they like, what they don't like. It's easy for you to just jump in and fix a problem. But when you get bigger, it's harder to catch all of that. Because again, you have more. You have more, but you don't prepare. You have more, but you lack preparation. And so employees or people are relying on memory. No real systems. And that's a problem, because if the standard was never clearly systematized, defined, their customer experience is always going to change depending on who is involved. And that's a missing link, because that's where the service becomes inconsistent. And it's not because your team stopped caring, right? It's not because your people are lazy. And it's absolutely not because you hired the wrong people. It's not because you hired the wrong people. And I can most likely tell you that you don't have a people problem, you have a system problem. And oftentimes, this is what I see. You see, they say, oh, I have a people problem. So they have people here, but the real issue is systems, right? This is the real. They think, oh, I just need better people, right? But really, it's systems that you don't have. And that's the difference. Okay? But that is not going to solve the issue for you if your people, if your standards, if your systems are unclear. It's really, really critical that you understand that you have a system problem. Because here's what I see, right? And I see this a lot in my work, where people hire people, right? Companies hire people, and they think everyone is a problem. But have you considered what is the system that you are bringing them into? What is that system? Do you have a system in which you bring people into that makes them stay, that makes them want to do what is right? Do you have a clear system or standard as to what the expectation is and what they have to do every single time? That's the difference. Next thing that I hear is that I have bad employees, right? I have bad employees. But really, it's not that you have bad employees, you have unclear standards. Because I love a great quote by Edward Demings where he said, a good person, a good person will struggle inside a bad system every single time. And when you begin to think about that, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And it reminds me of the story of Southwest, which many don't know. Like when they started, they were terrible, terrible. But Southwest did not fire everyone and say, well, you guys are not good enough. They realized that they had the wrong system and found the right system and became the most profitable in the airline industry for over 35 years. That's because they understood this. And if you think you have a people problem, no, it's most likely you have a system problem. The other thing that I hear is my people don't care enough, right? Don't care. They say my people don't care. Maybe there's lack of structure. Because your people care, but they don't know what is going to require or what it takes, what they need. And that's why you have to clearly show them what to do. So, I'm going to show you a 3-step framework in order to do that. A 3-step framework where you can help your team be better at what they are doing. And it's the SHR framework. The SHR framework. S, right? S is the standard. S is the standard. H is the handoffs. R is the rhythms. Okay? The rhythms. So we are going to take each one and we're going to talk through it. Okay? So let's start with S and let's do standards for that. Okay. So when you talk about standard, okay, in your business, and I love to do this exercise in terms of think about the brands or the companies or businesses that you enjoy doing business with. Why do you enjoy doing business with them? And oftentimes you hear things that has nothing to do with their product or service. It all talks about how they make you feel. It's all about how they make you feel. And that's the difference. Like, how do they make you feel? And how that is operationalized, right? Is that these companies have done a great job clearly identifying what that should look like. They make you feel because they are predictable. They are predictable. So, your goal Your job, your responsibility as a business is continue to prove this to the customer that you are predictable. The only way you can show predictability to the customer is by being consistent. But how you do that is by building clear standards. So the question to ask yourself is this: what does great look like? What does great look like? Because if you are not able to define that, then what your employees are going to do, I'm sorry, is that they are going to fill in the gaps. Okay? They are just going to fill in the gaps. Your employees are just going to fill in the gaps. And as a result, you are not going to be consistent. That is how you do that. Is by being clear about what great looks like. About being clear about what great looks like. The next thing that you need to focus on in this SHR framework is, right, is the handoffs. And when we talk about handoffs, you have to understand that everyone in your organization, everyone, not some of them, not a few of them, but everyone is responsible for the experience. Everyone is responsible for the experience. And here's why. The customer does not see department. The customer does not see department. They see the entire organization. And you have to be able to show that to the customer every time they interact with you, every time they do business with you. And so it's important that, yes, you have one department here, you have one department there, you have one department there. You have some which are on the front lines, right? I don't know what that looks like in your world, okay? But if this is department A, B, C, D, and E, okay? The question to ask yourself is, do all these things or do all these departments somehow work together? And if you're honest with yourself, the answer should be yes. 100%. They are all interconnected. So while in your world, Department C, right, may be the main front-facing department, but they are counting on the rest, okay? They are counting on A, B, D, and E. Sometimes they are counting on all the rest. But if C is the one that is front facing and doing the actual delivery of the final experience, whatever that looks like in your world, if you are not able to get your team to understand that they are working for each other, that is not going to work. That is why you have to clearly define what the handoffs are and what their responsibilities are when it comes to the first main point, which is the standard. When it comes to the standard that you want to deliver, the standard that brings about predictability and consistency, how do they fit into that standard? Because depending on what that is or what that looks like in your world, Department C here is not the only one. So if B, right, for the sake of this conversation, is sales, C is shipping, these are relying on each other. Because if this is doing the selling, they are relying on shipping to take care of the customer to send the shipment on time, right? Sales is probably relying on business development. Yes? Business ops. Business ops to actually find business so they can close on. So you see how this is all connected? But the whole job does not happen. Nothing happens if none of these people do their jobs. And that's why it's critical that you understand that everyone is connected somehow. Everyone is connected somehow when it comes to doing their job. And then finally, the R, right? The R, which is the rhythms from leadership. And let me tell you something, nothing is going to work without leadership involvement. Nothing is going to work without leadership involvement. Leadership commitment. Leadership's commitment. That is key. Leadership commitment in terms of leadership being the one to dictate what the standard should be. What does great look like? Who are we? And how are we going to bring about a standard that brings predictability and consistency in who we are? Is there a rhythm that coaches correct and reinforces the standard? Right? Do we know where the customer experience is breaking? Do we know where retention risk is forming as a result of our inconsistency? That is what a commitment is about. Because good people can still create inconsistencies if the standard is unclear. If the standard is unclear, great people can still create inconsistency. And that's the hard truth, but it's important. Because if you keep blaming people for the inconsistencies, it's not their fault. It is absolutely not their fault. So, how does all this connect together, right? Using the SHR framework, okay? The SHR framework. How does it all fit together in retention and revenue as a result? So, here we talk about retention system because we know without great service, great experience, retention risk is always forming. But that leads to revenue risk. The only way to bring about retention improving is by being consistent. Because consistency, right? Consistency leads to trust. Because if you build a standard and you've reinforced it, there's a better rhythm, coaching, correcting, reinforcing, celebrating. Now the customer builds trust. And that trust is what leads to retention. And ultimately, revenue. It is all connected. But you have to first understand the importance of the SHR framework. Because if there's a gap, nothing is going to work. Nothing is going to work. And so if you believe or if you feel like this is something that is happening in your business right now, the first step is no more training. You're probably wondering, how do we go about this? The first step that you need to do is focus on diagnosis. Is to focus on diagnosis. Okay? And diagnosis and clearly trying to understand who you are, trying to bring an identity to who you are, to who you are, what you do, Okay, who you are, what you do, and how you do it. This is where you start. This is where you start. And you start doing that by asking yourself, what does great look like? What does great look like? Because if you're not able to do that, it's hard to build a retention system if you have no identity about you. Because the identity is what sells, not your random trainings, not your random initiatives, not your random plans. It's about having a clear identity about you. Because when you look at the brands that you love, you enjoy, love to do business with, there's an identity about them. And that identity, that's what builds the trust, that's what builds the confidence, and that's what brings about the feeling. Because when someone asks you, why do you love doing business with X, Y, or Z? Like I said, it's often, most of the time, it has nothing to do with the product or service they provide. It has everything to do with how they make you feel. And that is a difference. So focus on diagnosing, focus on clearly defining what great looks like, focus on identifying who you are. Because if you don't, that is going to lead to the inconsistency, the unpredictability. And hear me when I say this, inconsistency to the customer is risk. Inconsistency to the customer is risk. That's why they don't trust you. Trust drops. They doubt. They are not sure. And that is why you have to understand that retention is built on trust. The only way you build trust is by being consistent. If the experience keeps changing, trust eventually weakens. Trust just weakens as a result, you know? So it's really, really important that if you are going to build trust, you focus on standards, you focus on the handoffs, plus the rhythms that your team need to keep everything together. So if you feel like your customer service has gotten worse or it's not as it used to be, focus on these things. It's very, very important. Focus on, is the standard clear or unclear? Are the handoffs breaking? Okay. Is it just a key few employees or just the owner that is holding everything together, acting as a glue? Is the team interpreting what should be systematized as a result? Because that is where the work starts. It's not another training. It's not another meeting. It's not another motivational speech. And it's not another reminder. The goal is to build a system that the business can consistently deliver that customer, like show the customer that they care. So if you are scaling, growing service-based business, you want to turn your personality-driven approach when it comes to customer service, customer experience, into one that is consistently delivered without you being the one to hold it all together or be on top of every single detail. So I have an opportunity for you. If you believe growth has exposed the cracks, I want to help you diagnose why that is the case and help you build the system. So if everything that we have talked about here today sounds like what is happening in your business, I'm actually opening a founding member spot for the Client Retention Action Sprint. Over 3 weeks, we will identify where service inconsistency is showing up, and as a result, where retention risk might be forming, and what needs to be systematized first. You walk away with a clear retention action plan. You're not going to get another binder or another random training. Like I said, this is a practical plan showing you where your customer experience, your business might be vulnerable to retention risk. So if that sounds like you, go ahead, and there'll be a link in the description where you can also take our free retention risk score. It's an assessment, takes about 3 or 4 minutes to do, and you'll be able to identify where retention risk is actually forming. And if you're someone who is interested in the retention action plan sprint for the next 3 weeks, just go ahead and let us know in the comment, and then we'll send you the details as to where to apply. Thank you. And if you have any questions, let me know. Let me know what you thought about the video, and I'll see you in the next video.